Just to clear up a little bit, I don't know if everybody here has heard about the Amish raids that took place a couple of weeks ago. The OSPCA raided 16 Amish farms on one day, 2 weeks ago Monday, 3 weeks ago Monday now, and it was up just east of Godrich. And I got a call from our landowner from Mitchell, who the head of the landowners down there was Cindy Moyer, and she called me on her way to the farm. They called her for help, and she'd never been to one of these before, so she was looking for some coaching. And so anyways, it went well. They had warrants for 16 farms. They obtained warrants for 16 farms by having 3 of their veterinarians sign a request for a warrant to a justice of the peace, saying they suspected there could be animal abuse on these 16 farms. That was words on the warrant. We have the warrant. Ian Cummings, I know most of you guys probably here know him, anybody in the farm community, he has a copy of the warrant. We sent it over to him. So the warrant doesn't always mean there's any oversight. Whenever you pay the veterinarian to say whatever you want, I'm not going to say the justice was in the bag either, but we're checking that one out. So, a justice of the peace doesn't have to be a lawyer or anybody else. He can be a dentist. He can be a delivery truck man, just like Nick.
I'll take it! I know how much they make!
But that's the weakness of the justice system in the lower courts, and that's why the landowners have opted for the higher courts, if we can get there on appeals, and that gets you into more of the common law situation where jurisprudence, or whatever you call it, jurisprudence rules. Can't talk, can't think. Anyways, I'm taking lessons from Nick. He gets away with it. I should be able to eventually. But anyway,
why don't you try it in French?
So anyways, at this particular farm, they were in hunt of dogs, of course, puppy mills they call those. I have a sheep mill and a bit of a cattle mill at home as well. And from the point of view of life in the country, to us, if you got a dog that's somebody wants to buy, that's agriculture to me. You know, you've got an animal for sale and you look after it great. There's nothing wrong with puppy mills, if you want to call them that. These dogs were all well looked after, because when you raid 16 farms, and all you can come up with is a cold puppy that was born a couple hours before that, and a dog with tartar on its teeth, and a puppy with suspected ear infection. That was it, guys. Okay, we have 45 OSPCA officers on the ground, plus 3 police officers for every 2 OSPCA officers. The police were disgusted. They were there, they talked to our people, they were disgusted with the situation. But nothing they can do, because the OSPCA Act forces them to comply and run with them. So they're under their jurisdiction at that point. Anyways, I probably said enough about that. We're not very happy with the OSPCA. That's why we're trying to back Jack and get this thing changed. I also want to talk to Nick's, when he was mentioned about standing up and fighting the boys that went across the ocean and fought for us. I never stood up very much to fight in this country until I got into this group. I didn't know we had to fight. I thought we were free. Nobody told me they were trying to take it away. So, and I think the price of freedom is that you always have to be on the alert that it's being chipped away at. That's the way it works. And if we're not always fighting, the boys that went down in the trenches and had to fight their way out of them, they had a lot tougher job than we have. So this is pretty easy up here. And The other thing I was going to bring you up to speed on a little bit. Now, some of you have heard about the patent grants, and anybody wants to hear about those, you can hear them from Liz Marshall at CARP. And I do have a copy of one here that's old. It's just a copy. But we also have one here, and I probably can't find it because I'm trying to, but it has an interesting reservation on it. Anybody that lives near a river. This patent grant was penned in 1962, so it's not too long ago. And it was at Griffith, Ontario. And on that patent grant, there's a reservation for floodplain. So the floodplain is marked on by the M&R. That is the floodplain. Now, any of you folks that are near a river and you don't have a floodplain marked on your patent grant, you can decide where that floodplain is because they don't have a say over it. But as I said, you'll probably end up in court and it'll be. But that's where this thing lies. If they didn't have to have that marked on there, they wouldn't mark it on in 1962. So any of the new reservations and patent grants have a lot more reservations on them. But if they're not on there and you got one that's back in the 1840s and 1820s like I have, there's no reservations like that on there. The other thing we were going to talk about a little bit, and I'm not going to stick to this too long, but I've got a little picture here. Anybody know who he is?
Bobolink.
That's the famous bobolink. And I really like this little bird. I really do. I'm not being facetious. I grew up on a farm with horses only, and we cut hay with horses, and those things would be fluttering in your head when you're cutting, and you can hear them and see them, and they're pretty. And we used to take the babies and throw them out in the next swath so they wouldn't get hurt. And we didn't have seagulls in those days. That changed, and now we got hay binds that travel pretty fast, and we still throw them out, try and protect them and get them out, but as fast as you can set them out, the seagulls pick them up and take them off. So now, in that line of thinking, a seagull is an invasive species. He came in from inland. The first time I ever seen a seagull was at Kingston. I was 16. And first time I ever seen one, went to Kingston for Old Fort Henry. We never seen one on the farm. We didn't see them until the 70s. And they started invading the place. And now you go down with the plow and it's white behind you. You go down with the hay bind and they're just following and running with the tractor almost, trying to get the mice and the birds behind you. And everybody wonders why the hawks have nothing to eat, you know, because these things pick everything up. So on the venue of invasive species, the bobolink's an invasive species. He invaded North America whenever man started farming here. They don't live in bush or rocks, you know. They live in hayfields, and they like really nice worked tame hay, timothy and brome and that kind of stuff. Because they don't do that in pastures. You'll never see a bobolink in a hay pasture with cattle. So in their own way, they're an invasive species that peaked. Their volume peaked in the 1920. And at that time in the Carolinas, up here they eat bugs. When they head back home, they eat rice. They eat rice and small grains. And they head back to Argentina every winter. Long trip, 20,000 kilometers round trip. But as they go by the Carolinas, they stop for a little snack on the rice paddies. And those guys don't take very kindly to that. And the marshal in South Carolina in 1920, they accounted for 720,000 bobolinks killed and sent off on ships for food. They're a delicacy.
How big are they?
Pretty small, but they're when they fly at night. They travel at night when they're migrating. And in Jamaica, they call them the butterbird. They got a lot of different names. In Jamaica, they call them the butterbird, and they shoot them by the thousands for delicacy, as a delicacy. So they've got a lot of enemies, and they're mostly not farmers in Ontario, I can tell you that. And in Argentina, they go back there and they raid the crops down there badly. That's all they do down there. They raid grain fields. And so they're on the target list down there. So as many as we can save up here, they're going to shoot them down there. So they're really out of their range. When I say that, like they are an invasive species. They're like a starling. They're like the English sparrow. They're talking now on the species at risk. They're talking about the barn swallows are now on that list as well. The barn swallows are on that now. Now the reason they're on it, barn swallows like little farms. And most of the little farms are disappearing and becoming big cash crop areas. And our barn swallows also like animals. Because where you got animals, you got flies. So our barns used to be lined with swallow nests when we had the cattle there. They're just hanging onto the eaves everywhere you looked. And the invasive species, the starlings and the English sparrows, would kill them as fast as they could pull them out of the nest. But there were so many of them, there were so many small farms, they didn't hurt their numbers. Now they are. The starlings are still here in the masses. Everybody sees them. And the English sparrows haven't backed up. But the swallows don't have the food supply because the animals are gone. So that's what we're dealing with in Lindsay tomorrow. And some of these things that... just 1 second here. I don't have a sec producer here, so he's not getting me ready. Some of the offenses that go along with disturbing a species. This is for an individual person. First offense, $250,000. Mark thought he had it tough. You know, $25,000. You know, second offense, $500,000. And that's the other thing wrong with our government at the moment. Because of the huge fine, there is no justice because people are afraid to say no and fight back. Because if they lose, now everybody says you'll never get this fine, but what if you do? You know? And this is for a corporation here. The next one is $1 million for the first one, $2 million for the second. And that goes towards butternut trees. I've got a fellow call me from Carp just a week ago. He's got a nice business going. He's got 24 employees. He's got a butternut tree at the gate. Nothing, no harm to it. Everything's good. He drives by it. He wants to renovate his building. They will not give him a permit to renovate his building because it's within 75 feet of that tree. You cannot get a permit. So, it takes a long time to get your patent grant now. He says he doesn't think his employees can hold pee that long. He needs a washroom. But I talked to the M&R about that, and at the farm show this week, this fellow was a former M&R officer, now with the conservation authorities. And we all think that's pretty bad when we talk like that. But this guy was absolutely horrified at the species at risk legislation. He said that is run on a separate committee. The committee is CASARO. I do have what that stands for here, but I haven't got it pulled up. But it is a committee that decides what species will be on the list. And to get on to the committee, there's only two groups of people can be on the committee. Either a scientist or a native person. That's the only two people can be on. Doesn't matter what your specs are, what other specs you have going. Okay, CASARO. That's the Committee on the Status of Species at Risk in Ontario. Scientists are Aboriginal only. It's Tom.
Can we get
okay, well.
Anglophones on that?
Go ahead, sorry, Nick, I was just playing.
Can we get Anglophones on that list?
Absolutely. I was going to mention down the road. I was going to mention down the road the other invasive species, and they came to this country over the Atlantic, most of them, and they're called the small farmers of Ontario. But they are an invasive species, and they should be on this list. But they're an invasive species plus endangered species.
What about Irish?
What about them? Anyways, I should let somebody else stand up here for a minute, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how much private property there is in Ontario. Right off MNR's website, 13% of Ontario is private property. All the rest is Crown or public. Wow. So that's what we're fighting over here, folks. They want the rest of it. They already have 87%. They want the rest of it. And this MNR officer I talked to, former MNR officer at the show, I talked to him because we dealt with this legislation a lot, and I said, you guys have no authority on private property, only on Crown and public. He said, you're absolutely right. We have no authority on that. He said, but they keep writing these little laws and sending their enforcers out to go on them. Mostly municipalities, by the way. Municipalities tend to have small governments that elect councillors that want to change things and make things better and not intentionally do it wrong, but they make laws to protect their neighbor and help their neighbors out because everybody wants somebody else to protect them now. Nobody wants to stand up for themselves, so we want our community to stand up and defend us against our neighbors. Basically what it is. So that's why this single call works. You know, you just have to have one complaint from some anonymous neighbor and they have to come and respond to it. That needs to be changed. There's no doubt that has to be changed. I don't know how you do it.
Just say no.
You got to change it from somewhere. But those are some of the things that we're dealing with, folks. And any questions about that, we'd be happy to answer them if you want to go.
Tom, can you just clarify that Amish business with the puppy mills? Like, what was it? A bunch of families just breeding some dogs or something? It wasn't like a huge farm?
And I just told you about the raid down there, but they also raided the McCobden. I talked to my friends up there and asked them to go check, and the Amish are the perfect victim because they will not defend themselves. They will not tell them they can't come in. If they ask them a question, they'll answer them. And they convict themselves by opening their mouth, and they even went back. They got a warrant to enter the farm buildings, 16 of them. They left at 5 o'clock because that warrant was over. Now, you got to realize this warrant was issued, I think, 7 days before that. So if these dogs were in distress, they should have been all dead by then. They didn't activate the warrant and win until 7 days later. But then they went away and our guys left. They went away and got warrants again and entered their houses. Yeah, they entered their houses. Go ahead, John.
Tom, the initiative for that raid in Huron County on those 16 houses on the same day was all about dogs. And that came from Toronto.
Yep.
And the Toronto mentality of many of the people in Toronto is that it is wrong to sell puppies and kittens in pet shops. The Amish people view it as a business, just like animal agriculture, and they raise dogs to sell puppies to these shops in Toronto. They do a good job of it. Yeah. It is humane. The animals are well looked after, just as they look after their farm animals very well. But in Toronto, that's not part of the equation. It's not abuse. They just object to the process of raising dogs for the purpose of making money. So they established a few words, and it's called "Get the Amish."
It's right on their website.
I disagree with puppy mills. Too much birthing for those female dogs.
Well,
Either let